Have you ever been in a situation where you needed an expert to assist because you knew that there was a challenge or goal that was a little bit outside of your knowledge or skill set? Or maybe you thought, you know what? My friend might have a really good perspective on this. My friend knows me, knows my context. Let me see what they have to say. But the expert seems to be very focused on their area of expertise in a way that makes you feel like they're missing some of the context and variables that are important in optimizing the solution. And your friend, while completely supportive, what you bring hits a little bit too close to home. And so your friend ends up giving you advice and suggestions out of their own experience or that of their friends. And the problem is that that experience doesn't match the full context of your needs at hand. Last year, that happened to me. There was a problem that I was trying to solve, and I really wanted to rely on experts to solve it. And what caught my attention is how vulnerable I felt when I wanted to lean on someone else, but I felt like I kept having to educate them about the variables that were relevant to the situation at hand. I know this logically because I've quarterbacked experts on behalf of my clients many times through the years. But at a personal level, it was isolating and incredibly fatiguing. So, integrated genius rests on the premise that assessing goals and challenges from multiple angles is going to leave us with a more complete, accurate, sustainable, and hopefully optimizing pathway forward. Let me give you some examples. Let's suppose that a person struggles with energy, as many of us do some point in our life. And that person seeks out a life coach or spiritual advisor. The response may be something like this. You know, a lot of people struggle with energy and burnout when there's a misalignment between what they're doing and what really gives them purpose. Are you finding joy in what you do, or do you need to reconsider? Or that person seeks out, let's suppose it's a psychologist without a health background. And that psychologist listens and says, all right, so your energy is low and you're not finding the pleasure that you normally would have in fun activities. And the person's like, yeah, nothing feels fun anymore. The psychologist says, I think this is mild depression. Let's suppose the person seeks a healthcare provider and the private provider says, let's run some labs. Sure enough, comes back as deficient in vitamin B and vitamin D. And the provider says, all right, there's the problem. Let's bump that up and we'll see what your energy looks like 6 months from now. Maybe the person seeks out a sleep expert. And the sleep expert says, yeah, a lot of times people have disrupted sleep without even being aware of it. So let's get you hooked up with a sleep study. And sure enough, it comes back that this person has sleep apnea. And so the sleep expert says, all right, we'll get you on a CPAP and that's going to solve the energy problems. Or maybe this person sees a business coach. The business coach looks at the model and looks at what they're doing and says, you're just juggling way too much. Your focus is distributed and that's exhausting for everyone. And we've been talking for the last few months about your leadership and you don't have senior leadership that you can really rely on. So of course you're exhausted because you're carrying all of this responsibility. The problem isn't that any of those individuals are wrong. The problem is that without each specialist accounting a little bit for the other variables at hand, this person may think that they have the solution and go down the wrong path or an incomplete path and then have to start all over again or just get suboptimal outcomes. Here's a different example. It's financial related. Suppose that you have a business owner and this business owner has the good problem of having great profit margins. So at the end of the year, he's trying to make a decision about what to do with the money. Well, an accountant might say, let's look at where we can save taxes. Let's do all the tax savings that we can. Maybe this person talks to a friend and does some Googling and says, you know what, maybe I should take my entity and transmute it from an LLC with S corp taxation to a corporation. Maybe this person sees a wealth advisor who doesn't have a background with a lot of the variables related to business owners. And the wealth advisor says, you know what, this is fantastic. Let's just get this invested. And that way you can reap the rewards of having a lot of extra money to invest right now. Or maybe this person talks to a serial entrepreneur who has built and sold many businesses, or somebody that specializes in selling businesses. And they say, you know what, let's just grow the business, reinvest all of the profit, grow it as fast as you possibly can, get that valuation up, sell the business, and then you can use all of that money to distribute into investments or buy new businesses. Again, the problem is that none of them are wrong. None of those perspectives are wrong, except that the right answer has to account for who is this owner, what are their short and long-term goals, what are the needs of the business, and what are the different scenarios and the pros and cons of each pathway forward. And finally, let's suppose that you have an organization, and this organization is struggling with team cohesion and morale. This area is close and dear to my heart because it's the area where I've turned down the most business over the years. Not because I don't do it, I do. However, what I've seen is that people are often seeking or given solutions that are a mismatch for the actual problem at hand. Years ago, I was at an organization and I noticed that the morale was suboptimal. It wasn't in your face. It wasn't that people hated each other and hated coming to work, but there was just this sense of lethargy. And I noticed that they weren't communicating with each other. There were problems that seemed to be very solvable with more group communication, or even ideas that could get some wings if there was a little bit more collaboration involved. But instead, everybody was in their own offices, except for the occasional group meeting, which was more of an update in terms of what was happening during the week or what to move forward. So I finally felt comfortable enough to ask a leader about it. And I said, I'm just curious, this is what I'm noticing. And he said, you know, it wasn't always this way. We used to have a really cohesive team and a great culture. People collaborated and worked together. And that's how we drove a lot of the success. And I was like, well, what changed? So he thought about it for a minute. And he said, you know, there used to be a snack area. And people would come out of their offices and they would take breaks and they would gather. And in gathering there throughout the day, they would see other colleagues and just naturally start talking about work and sharing ideas and problem solving. But he said there was a point where the organization really decided to focus on productivity. And so they worried that people were spending too much time in the snack area. So they removed it. So in that scenario, on the surface, someone could say, I do personality assessments. I can help your team by giving them personality assessments and helping them to understand each other better and communicate with each other. Or let's do a team building day and just really get people out to have fun and, again, just boost the morale of the organization. Or let's do a presentation on burnout and what the most frequent causes of burnout to see if we can help people find fulfillment in their jobs again. None of those are wrong. But the problem is that they leave out a really important conversation with the people who are driving the business decisions of the organization, which is, how do we get the productivity we want and the profit margins that we want without cutting off the legs that created it in the first place? And finally, the reason that I specialize in high achievers is because a lot of the solutions that are provided for high achievers are the same ones that are given to 95% of the population. And high achievers, humble though they may be, they are, is that doesn't work for them. So the high achievers is left saying, okay, I don't feel like I'm that special, but am I missing something because what's given to me just doesn't fit right for myself or for my organization? Integrated genius does not purport to have all of the angles and all of the variables at hand. However, what I and the people that I collaborate with are committed to is having as full of an understanding as possible of the context and the different variables that impact you so that we can provide the best pathways forward for you and your organization.